Hi, Andrew Venables here at WMS Firearms Training. We're going to have a look at fitting this lovely quick detach return to zero scope mount to the Sauer 404. We've got to get the scope and the rings and the mount all attached together in a way that enables us to shoot well. So let's start the process. The first thing we need to do is clip the quick detach mount on and bring the lugs around so that everything is together. That's it, it's in. That goes round thumb tight, this one goes round thumb tight, and when they're clipped back in, you've now got the mounts fixed, and if this is taken off and put back on again 100 times, it will return to zero. That's all the good news. We've now got the more fiddly bit to do. We've got to get these screws out, and we've got what I call the snap fit scope rings, in that you've got to actually click them over the top of the scope. They're not just the half round ones. There's a little bit of force involved in getting them on. It'll take us just a minute or two to get these things off. In terms of tips on how to do this, we want to do this without scratching the scope as far as possible. If you force these over the top of the scope as they are, you can see there's some pressure involved and you can scratch the scope. What I find helps is to use a bit of decent quality white printing paper, and if you put the paper over the top and then clip this down, the paper takes the hit, as it were. These rings do fit very tight, so what I'm going to need to do is push that up there and then pull the ring back down off the paper, and there we have an undamaged scope. Now we've got to get this onto the rifle without everything falling over. We're going to fit the scope on, and two things are critical. One, that when the rifle's straight, the scope is perfectly straight with the horizontal reticule at exactly 180 degrees to the rifle, and that we have the correct eye relief here to allow us to get a correct cheek weld and position on the stock. We normally find the eye relief on most modern scopes, if my eyebrow was touching the side of my finger, is between 3 and 4 fingers. If you're closer, if you're 2 fingers worth, this is a 338 Winchester Magnum, and if your head is within 3 fingers of this scope, you're going to be cruising for one of these little scars I have above my eyebrow here, because I've been hit by more scopes than I care to remember. So initially we just need to secure this so it doesn't all fall off. So we're going to get a couple of screws back in and just start to knit these screws up. We want the same amount of tension all round eventually on these screws, and we want the gap on this side between the ring and the base, the bottom of the ring mount there, to be the same as the one on the other side. We've got it so that we can still move the scope backwards and forwards, but it will stay more or less where it is. The position of the scope to the eyebrow will be subjective, and it'll vary between different people. I've taken up a kneeling position on this bench. I'm allowing my cheek to fall into the centre of this thing here. I've got a perfectly clear picture through the scope, but the interesting thing now is how to set this up straight. Most people mount rifles with a slight cant into their shoulder because that's the shape our shoulder is. And if I straighten the scope now, the rifle's not straight. So what I need to do subjectively, I'm actually going to put the back of the rifle down. We could be using spirit levels for this. I'm going to put the scope onto the minimum possible zoom, which gives me the largest possible picture. And what I'm doing now, with the rifle at 90 degrees pointing vertically, is checking that the vertical crosshair is basically cutting straight down through the rifle. The reading glasses go on for this. What I'm doing is looking at the gap either side on the rings, and I'm just going to start to nip up the rear ring, just checking that we're maintaining the same gap either side. It's important with these that they're done at what I call finger tight. Now I haven't got a torque wrench here. I could have a torque wrench, but we haven't got one, and we're looking to just get these nipped up. If you turn it that way and put your wrist into it, you're likely to shear things off and or damage the scope. So the scope's fitted, we have the correct eye relief, it's straight, and in normal recoil this isn't going to catch my eye. When we're mounting the rifle up, you'll notice that if I put my cheek on the comb as if it were a shotgun, on rifles that kick, what that means is to get a view through the scope, I have to do that. Now what I've done is I've broken the tight bond between my cheek and the stock. When it's like that, when the rifle recoils, it's just going to push back. But if I lift my head up, when it recoils, it's going to start to come back and then it's going to snap up. and whop me on the chin. The very kind people at Sauer thought of this, and if I put this tool, which normally lives in the forend, into this little hole here, and I undo it, what I can do is raise this up, and I'm going to guess it's going to be about the digit of my trigger finger, and if I nip it off again, watch, when I mount the rifle up, shotgun fashion, I'm now absolutely straight on the scope, I can't drop down below it, and I've got a very tight relationship here and good cheek weld, and when the rifle fires, bump, there's no gap to fill, I won't get a bruise on my cheek. So that will help us a lot. When the Javelin bipod isn't in the front end of this darling little tool lives in there. It actually locks in, and you can see it forms part of the front sling swivel. Okay, we have the scope fitted. It's straight, it's correct. Now we're going to need to go and zero it, and we'll go through the rest of the controls when we do the zero session.